Number 5, Georgia. Number 1, Texas. Texas is a 5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 0.5 references to Sam Ehlinger. We're back. I held the A because he held the A, and I hated how long he held the A when he said that. Nearly 6 years ago, that was, Will. I'd argue Texas is responsible for the 2 most embarrassing moments of the playoff era, and they both happened that night in the Sugar Bowl. That moment, as well as Bebo charging Uga like a psycho. Bad look all around. Texas, as we know, was not back after a 4-loss season, as Sam Ehlinger tried to declare. But Texas is indeed facing Georgia for the first time since then. At the time of that moment, when Sam Ehlinger held the ball for too long, Texas's longest home winning streak of the 2010s was a whopping 4 games. All right? This Texas team riding a streak of 11 consecutive home wins dating back to 2022 when national runner-up TCU came into Austin and won a 17-10 rock fight in November.
Yep.
And for Kirby Smart, I know this is going to be a little bit repetitive, but it is still a box that he has not checked. Okay? Talked about it with the Bama game. It is worth revisiting. 3 true road games against AP top 10 teams for Kirby Smart in his career as a head coach. 2017 at number 10 Auburn, lost that one 40-17. 2020 at number 2 Alabama, COVID crowd, didn't matter, lost that one 41-24. A couple of weeks ago, 2024 season, you might remember, at number 4 Alabama, they lost that one 41-34. By the way, Sark, 2 top 10 road wins since the start of last season. One at Bama last year, and then this year at Michigan. That matters a little bit less for a game in which he's going to be at home. The good news for Kirby is that he's getting closer. The bad news is that in 3 true road games against AP top 10 teams, Kirby Smart's defense allowed a minimum of 40 points. That is not ideal for Georgia. It's also not ideal that through this point of the season, we're at the midway point. Remember, again, I'm not trying to spook everybody, but we are at the midway point of the season. I don't think Carson Beck has a true go-to receiver. Will, I could not agree more with you that Bobo last week said, guys, let's find our go-to receiver. Let's throw the ball a million times. I don't care about balance. I don't care about any of that. Let's find our go-to receiver against Mississippi State because we are sure as heck not going to find that guy against Texas. Maybe it's Dylan Bell, but we're talking about a guy that's currently 15th in the SEC in catches, 24th in the SEC in receiving yards. Nice player. Love Dylan Bell. Don't know that he's a go-to receiver. He's a fun, unique matchup that you can use and can win you games, but go-to receiver, a little bit different. Maybe it's Arian Smith, who was excellent in 2 of the last 3 games. But Smith, in his 5 years at Georgia, has never had consecutive games against FBS competition with 25 receiving yards. Will, that's not a go-to receiver. It's not, okay? Now feels like a good time for Georgia to find whoever that is. And maybe it is going to be Arian Smith ending that drought in this game. Some have pointed out that despite the fact that this Texas defense is now number 1 in the country in scoring defense, yards per play allowed, yards per game allowed, yards per pass allowed, TD passes allowed, opposing 10-yard scrimmage plays, and opposing 20-yard scrimmage plays. I think I got it all. Oh, wait, I didn't. First in opposing 30-yard scrimmage plays as well. Some have pointed out that the offenses that Texas has faced, not great. They could be better. How much of that is because Texas is really good? How much of that is because those offenses aren't very good? I don't know. We'll find out this weekend. Georgia's the first offense that Texas will face that is inside the top 70 in FBS in scoring. Mississippi State is the only offense that Texas has faced that's inside the top 95 in scoring. Yeah. Georgia, only at 35. You'd think they'd be better. They're not. Not necessarily a lights out group just yet, especially when they have not really found those chunk plays in the ground game. Georgia fans, I need you to listen up here, okay? Maybe turn this up a little bit, look me in the eye, whatever. We're having a conversation, all right? Me and you, mano y mano. I believe I have picked your football team to win each of the last 26 games that it played, and I went back and counted, okay? The last time that I didn't pick your football team to win a game was 2022, the Tennessee game. It was my preseason prediction. It was after the Vols were a 7-win team who returned a lot of the key pieces that I like. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum. I didn't think they'd be number one at the time of the matchup, but when they were, I was like, yeah, I'm going to stick with that pick. Made it in the preseason. Why would I back off of it now? You know how that played out. Georgia is again facing a number one team, but this time it won't be between the hedges.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking the number one team in America to win by 3 touchdowns. Texas. Big game for this Texas offense. 42-21 Texas. Georgia fans, you're welcome.
I'm right there with you. I legitimately think we have done that together because I vividly remember picking Tennessee, and I vividly remember going, wait, this taught me something. Don't do this again. And then I got fooled into picking against Alabama every time, just like you. And again, not like fooled, but like I'm talking about respect towards Saban and I guess DeBoer. I guess Kane Wommack as well. I guess. I really I keep saying, hate to be Hugh Freeze here, guys, but I feel like if these teams played again, Georgia would be better than Bama. But unfortunately, it's not what it is. And so, yeah, I think we zeroed in on this. This is the game where Texas has a statement to make, not about their offense, but about their defense. And we talked about this last week with Oklahoma, but the challenge is just so much bigger this week. A guy in Carson Beck who can space out a defense, right? That, say what you will about who's played this season, but he certainly is the guy for Mike Bobo. That has been, there were plenty of other options. We could have hit the portal. We could have started the Viking. That's over in Kentucky. And so point being, I think that, this defense can solidify itself as the best defense in the SEC with a strong performance against Georgia.
Best in college football, it can solidify itself as.
Yeah, because, who else is,
Ohio State. Ohio State was the team that's up there, and then you see what they do at Eugene, which, obviously Oregon's going to get its points, but I wouldn't make any argument for anybody else besides Texas if they take care of business in this one.
Yeah, we have agreed to call their defensive coordinator PK. I might have to give him an additional nickname. That one doesn't quite hit the same, terms of endearment, But yeah, I think that this is a team that is so locked in. As I've said it before, on one side of the ball, we have a team that was last year able to do what Georgia can't do and go into Bryant-Denny and go beat a Nick Saban coached Alabama team and embarrass them in a way that not even Michigan was able to do. But this time it's at home, and this is exactly what you just said. We've seen an offense and a coach and a defense that can take their show on the road, but they've obviously been a little bit better at home. And then you have seen with Georgia, right? A lot of their big wins have been a Tennessee game at home. Whenever they have gone to even a neutral site game in Atlanta, hasn't been going great for him. So I think that, logically, and if you're Kirby Smart, you obviously have every reason to believe you can win this game. You're a 2-time national champion. Sark is winless in the college football playoff, and I get all that. But at the same time, these are two coaches that are very much vying for position. When Georgia gets to, or when Kirby gets to Athens, go back and look at that recruiting class. He had more 5-star quarterbacks than he knew what to do with. He ended up with Jake Fromm, who's not, as we often talk about, exactly a 5-star quarterback, but he's right there.
He just missed out.
Yeah. They're talking about Eason, talking about Justin Fields. When you go back and look at the recruiting classes, it was like nuts. It was like 5-star and 5-star and 5-star. And I had to go back and look at, where these receivers go, and they just haven't been going to Georgia as much. And the reason is Texas Longhorns. If you start to see, I'm not talking about specific battles. I don't want any Georgia fans to say, well, name me a guy. No, I'm just saying
A.D. Mitchell. Are you talking about that specific guy?
No, but I'm saying, if you're sold a certain lifestyle, which is okay, you're going to come to this big city. For Georgia, it's Atlanta. I know they're in Athens, obviously. I can't wait to see what Georgia fans are going to say after this. They're in Athens, obviously, right? But it's, you're right next to Atlanta. We're a team that is a good school. We have lots of money. We can make all of your dreams come through here in Athens with the college experience. Well, Austin brings all those things, for a certain type of 5-star athlete. And we're seeing more and more as, like I said, Texas is in that 2 and 3 teams, maybe even number 1, that's at a certain spending point. And Georgia has not exactly been there in the NIL era, but that's more of Kirby's choice, to be honest. We've seen Kirby opt out of pursuing some guys that made it come down to a money race. Whereas Sark has just said full speed ahead. Let's go ahead and get everybody. Let's get the guys out of Louisiana. Let's get the guys out of Texas. And so point being, I'm not going to say, oh, this is a stake in the road game for, whatever king of the SEC. But to a degree, these guys are going to be fighting for the same recruits for the foreseeable future in Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart. And one of them badly needs receivers, and the other one doesn't. And so if you're Steve Sarkisian and you can go say, hey, look, not only do we have Quinn Ewers, we got this Manning kid behind him too. So if you commit to Texas, we guarantee you're going to be in a great passing offense. Meanwhile, Georgia's sitting here and they're like, you guys like playing tight end? Huh? So point being, I think that for Kirby, this is a game that to be respected in the same way that Nick Saban was, you win, because every time and time again, we saw Nick Saban with his back against the wall. Oh, Dabo Swinney, he's passing him. Oh, he's struggling against South Carolina. Oh, whatever. And then they just would knock the snot out of this team, whoever it would be.
This would easily be the number 2 win for Kirby Smart if he can get it. Number one, you're not going to be that first that first national championship. That still takes the cake. But I would put this ahead of the Rose Bowl. I would put this ahead of beating that Oklahoma team. I truly would, with the things we've seen from Texas.
I might put that Ohio State win over that Oklahoma win.
They were not the better team for 3/4 of that game, too.
That's what's impressive.
Yeah,
and Ohio State usually does the opposite of that. Kirby usually hangs on.
Ohio State had already lost to Michigan and then showed up and played that game with a vengeance. And CJ Stroud was unbelievable. And the throws and the plays that guy was making, you didn't feel like Georgia was necessarily stopping him. And I'm not going to get into hey, what if Marvin Harrison Jr. stays healthy? I'm not doing that. But I just think in terms of what
he'd still be worse than Malik Neighbors. That's what happens if he stays. Just a fact. There's no opinion here, boys.
Look, oh God, I love Malik Neighbors so much.
So good.
The fact though that number 1 is there, and it's been, I think, very earned. This isn't like some mid-September game in which we're like, Texas got a lot of hype coming into the season, and then this is just going to fall off and it's going to age horribly. If Texas isn't in the college football playoff, I'll be stunned. I'll be absolutely stunned. The wheels will have had to have come off. Like, they are the most bulletproof team in the country right now in terms of the lack of weaknesses that they've shown and the personnel that you could, in theory, like what would be the worst injury for Texas right now? You could legitimately ask questions like that. I'd probably say actually Anthony Hill Jr. on the defense. Is that a crazy thing to say? Like, that would be a worse injury than Quinn Ewers, even as somebody that loves Quinn Ewers. But that's kind of the point, is that Texas has been this monster in the first half of the season. And if Georgia beats that team after what they did coming out of the gates to Bama, it would send such a loud statement to the college football world. And it's on the table. It is very much on the table, even though I am picking against your team, Georgia fans, for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I said this, and I'll probably make this point again. Was this 3 years ago that we had, what was his name, whatever, Banks, the special teams coach, had a monkey bite someone at his Halloween house?
It was 3 years ago because that was year 1 with Sark. Yeah, was it year 1 with Sark? I think it was. Yeah, that sounds right.
It was during COVID, so I think it was 3 years ago.
Well, COVID 4 years ago, but
it was like that era. You know what I'm saying? Like, because obviously they didn't. Anyway, so yeah, this was like, I'm not just going to keep talking about Sark's past, but it's not just, the way things ended at USC. It's the fact that this has been a guy who has gotten a little bit, drunk on power, and the way he's handled expectations has blown me away, to be honest. And that being said, I will hit on one thing, which is that Quinn Ewers is a guy, and we've talked about this, me and you, a little bit off air, but I think his arm strength is a little bit deceptive in like a bad way. Like, I think that we have this image of him where he was like this number 1 recruit, one of the greatest quarterback recruits of all time. And we think that he just has this like missile as if he was, Jaden Daniels or Joe Milton or something. But in reality, he kind of doesn't have great arm strength. And somehow, sometimes those are the picks that we see, Billy Bowman, the fluttering ball when he's kind of getting hit backwards. Well, this is a Georgia secondary that, talk about a prove-it game. I mean, if you're Georgia, you need to be able to
figure it out.
You need to be able to recruit 5-star DBs at the end of the day. There's a reason why Major Burns.
I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried. Georgia's going to continue to recruit 5-star DBs if they win or lose this game. They could lose this game 100-0, and Kirby's still going to line up 5-star DBs.
No, you're right. But I'm saying, like, there's a reason why Major Burns has been a staple at LSU, which is that room is among the most competitive and has been since Kirby got there. Because remember, Saban was a former DB. Kirby was Saban's defensive coordinator forever and also a former DB. Those have been 2 rooms historically, and it feels like Georgia took that mantle from Alabama whenever Pete Golding was there, as far as we are the college best DB. I'm not gonna say DBU because none of those guys have really translated to the pros in the way that another school has. But point being, that has been the most respected. It's like being an Oklahoma quarterback. It's like being an Iowa tight end. Being a Georgia DB has meant something for the last, since 2015, 2016, and since the last years of Richt. So that's a group with a lot of pride. And I always go back to the SC championship game when Nuss came in and was lighting it up, and you saw Kirby Smart on the sideline just lighting into his defense, even though the game was out of hand for half, 3/4 since the first quarter of that game, which is at the highest standard those guys have said, and they haven't lived up to it. And I think that Ewers is a guy who will take chances. And where I'm going with this is that against this Georgia back end so far, all you need to be is a guy who will take chances. Michael Van Buren is not, there's no Boston Tea Party going on. This is not some guy who is a revolutionary talent. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, Georgia needs to have that. Okay, we can talk about the offense, play calling, wide receivers, whatever it is. But to be a Georgia football team, you need to have great defensive backs. And against a guy like Ewers, if you play well, he's going to flutter some balls. If you do the Ryan Williams and say, oh, no, where did this guy go? Where did he come from? Texas has those style of athletes. So that's the big matchup I look for here is the deep ball. Quinn Ewers, at times, questionable arm strength because what he does is he tests the field a lot. Where Nussmeier will throw into double coverage, whereas Ewers will throw a ball that won't get there, because he's getting hit or he's on a weird angle and stuff. And so point being, that's the specific matchup I want to see here is how confident is Ewers just saying, bleep it, somebody down there.
Yeah. Can't wait for this one. Absolutely can't wait for it. A top 5 matchup that will feel every bit like it. And sorry, 12-team playoff haters. This game is still going to feel really important. It still will. And it'll still have huge, huge implications for the SEC race.